Could all come back to the table. Okay, I'm going to call the Coastal Sharks and Dogfish Board into session. My name is Mark Gibson from state of Rhode Island, and I'm the board chair. I guess before I go to this agenda, we have a leftover item from the last board recognition award. Leroy?
Thank you. We had a presentation we'd like to make, and tried to make it at the previous board meeting, but I think Dr. Daniel must have had a premonition. He ran out of the room. Anyway, we've been wanting to officially congratulate Dr. Daniel for his new role as the chair of ASMFC. Pennsylvania has fewer ASMFC species than I think any other state. For example, we have no weak fish, we have no red drum, we have no croaker, we have no sea bass, or we have no sharks. We're not on this board. That might be why we sit in the back of the room all the time. I'm not sure, but we do have a lot of species in Pennsylvania, and we really like our fish. And and we're certain that Dr. Daniel likes our fish too, because he said so to us. So in recognition of Dr. Daniel's new role as chair and appreciation for his concern for Pennsylvania species, on behalf of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we'd like to make this presentation. So if Lou could join us here at the back of the room, and I'd ask Lauren to assist me.
Okay, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to mention, some of you know that I've served many years as an environmental educator, and so I understand the conclusions of our very young children in the Commonwealth. For example, kindergartners and first graders. And I did really an unscientific poll, but it's still a poll of what is to be considered the most precious fish as identified by those kindergartners. And I am so pleased that they overwhelmingly agree with Dr. Daniel that fish is our beloved, not brook trout, not muskie, not even smallmouth bass. It is indeed our beloved bluegill. And recognizing that fact, the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission saw fit on a recent cover of our magazine, the Pennsylvania Angler and Boater, to, in a sense, honor Dr. Daniel by presenting perhaps his favorite fish also, the bluegill. So without further ado, Dr. Daniel.
Next meeting, I'm going to bring this picture of me. I was about 7 years old, and it was the first fish I ever caught in my life on a cane pole. I had a mohawk haircut that my dad had given me right after the last of the Mohicans aired on Masterpiece Theater. And I cut that fish open and stuffed him with cotton and nailed him to a board, because my dad had a mounted bass. And I put it in my room, in my closet. And about a week later, my mama found it. So bluegills are my favorite fish too.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel.
That was all. Okay, we'll get to our business at hand.
Good job.
The first order of business is approval of the agenda. Is there any request for additions? Dave Borden.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like about 2 minutes to discuss Spiny Dogfish and some of the actions of the New England Council and the Mid-Atlantic Council.
Yes, I know we have a letter that we just passed out regarding that. So without objection, at the end of the session, we'll take that up under other business. It will be a very, very brief agenda item. Thank you. Anything else on the agenda? Is there any objection to approving the agenda as just modified? Seeing none, that stands approved. Proceedings from October 2013 annual meeting, which I was not at, and thank you for to my vice chair Adam for taking care of that session. I think he's here today, isn't he? No. Are there any comments or requests for edits on the proceedings from the annual meeting? Seeing none, is there any objection to approving those proceedings as presented? Okay, by consent, those stand approved. Any public comment on issues not on the agenda, recognizing that we have added a brief spiny dogfish discussion? No one signed up. No. Seeing none, we'll move right into the Coastal Sharks FMP review. Marin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the 2013 Coastal Sharks FMP review and state compliance. It's a very brief presentation. So, commercial landings, these are the commercial landings by species groups. The large coastal sharks landed 425,612 pounds, and this was a slight decrease from 2011. For small coastal shark species in 2012, landings were, I have a mistake. Well, I'll get the correct numbers and tell you the landings, but the small coastal shark landings was a 10% increase from the 2011 landings. And the Atlantic pelagic species of sharks landings were 314,084 pounds, which is similar to previous years. And that's in the commercial sector. For the recreational sector, approximately 444,007 fish were harvested, which is a slight decrease from 2011. And small coastal sharks comprise the majority of this harvest, representing 75% of landings. There are no specific surveys aimed at coastal sharks, and there are no requirements for that in the FMP. However, 5 surveys encountered sharks in 2012. Of these surveys, there were trends in 2 of them, and those trends were in Delaware and South Carolina. Sand tiger shark catch per mile remained high. Sandbar and smooth dogfish catches continued to increase, and it was the highest recorded CPUE of large coastal sharks in the South Carolina Gillnet survey, and that's the time series is since 1998. The PRT reviewed all the state compliance reports, and all states that submitted reports had regulations consistent with the FMP. In a previous version of the FMP, which you had, Florida had not submitted a compliance report. However, I have since received that report, and Connecticut has not yet submitted a report. So, but other than that, everyone is in compliance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions for Marin on that report? Dave, do you want to address the board on that issue?
Apologize and beg for your forgiveness. So do we owe you a spiny dogfish report or coastal sharks plan report? Okay.
Coastal sharks.
All right, thanks. And close our fisheries. Okay.
Thanks. Were there any, Mr. Augustine?
I would consider making a motion to find them out of compliance, but I don't think I will. Are you ready for a motion to approve the review?
I think we are, unless there is any questions or other comment from the board on the report. Seeing none, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Rick Bellavance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve the Coastal Shark FMP review and state compliance as presented today.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second? Rick Bellavance. Discussion on that motion. Is there any opposition to the motion? Pat Augustine.
In all seriousness, is it a real issue for Connecticut to prepare this? I just, for the record, I think he may have a problem with staffing or something, but it might be helpful for us to get it on the record.
Well, we don't have a report from Connecticut. I don't think it's a particularly urgent issue, but see what Dave had to say about timing it when he thinks he could produce that.
That was the question, because if he does it, we might just say, gee, we don't have time and we're not going to do it next year. I just don't want to leave it hanging out there. And I do know he has some staffing problems, so if he wants to respond to it, I can come up there. I'd be a consultant to him.
Dave says. I'm not going to give Pat an excuse to do or not do anything, so we will have that within a couple of weeks.
Very good. So can we approve this report conditional on the receipt of the Connecticut report? How about that? Any opposition to that motion and that understanding? Seeing none, the report's approved, conditioned on Connecticut supplying their needed element. Next is state proposals for Addendum 3. Marin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these are the implementation plans for Addendum 3 to the Coastal Sharks FMP. If you recall, this addendum was approved in October 2013, and it will be implemented by March 1st, 2014. States submitted their plans by January 6th of 2014, and the PRT reviewed their implementation plans and has the following recommendations. The 2 elements of compliance. The first is that states show that they can follow NOAA fisheries openings and closures for the following groups: the aggregated large coastal sharks, hammerhead, blacknose, non-blacknose, small coastal sharks, and pelagic species. And Most states already had that in place, so that was pretty easy. The second element of compliance was enforce a minimum recreational size limit of 78 inches for all hammerhead shark species, and those species are smooth hammerhead, scalloped hammerhead, and great hammerhead sharks. So as I said, for the quotas and possession limits, all states have the ability to follow NOAA fisheries openings and closures by March 1st, 2014, so all states are in compliance for that element. And most states demonstrated that they have the ability to increase their recreational size limit for hammerheads by March 1st, 2014. Rhode Island just indicated that they would not be able to have that in place until May 1st, but that's not a concern since the sharks don't exist in their waters until after that date, so we're not too worried about that. Maine and New Hampshire also requested de minimis for Addendum 3, since the sharks addressed in this addendum don't occur in their state waters, and the PRT and TC recommend granting de minimis to Maine and New Hampshire. So the general recommendations from the PRT are to improve the implementation plans for all states and just confirm the compliance during the next FMP review, and also to approve Maine's and New Hampshire's de minimis requests. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You ready to make a motion? Just hang on a minute. I just wanted to speak to Rhode Island's matter. This is simply a sequencing of our public hearing docket. We have, 30-day notice responsibilities, 20 days following promulgation for them to become effect, and we had a large set of public hearings to digest this past fall and early winter, so they got backed up. But again, I agree with the PRT that this is not really an issue. But we'll see if there's any comments from the board on. Are there any questions for Marin on that report? Okay, I guess we're ready for you, Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can put it back up there, what the last slide was, and that would even make it easier. I wouldn't have to try to remember what I said. But I would move to approve the recommendations of the PRT, state implementation plans, and acceptance, and given the states of Maine and New Hampshire de minimis status. You want to put the states in there for de minimis status also?
No, that's a different one.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Bill Adler. Thank you. State proposals for Addendum 3. It's like, my understanding, it's a move to approve the state implementation plans for Addendum 3. And that motion was made by Pat Augustine, seconded by Bill Adler. All right. Thank you. I think we're caught up. Discussion on that motion. Is there any objection to the motion? Do I need to read it? You're good. Okay. Okay. No objection. That's approved by unanimous consent. Next issue is this. I'm a little bit ill-informed on this, having missed the last meeting, so I'm only familiar with it insofar as it's written in the proceedings from the Simon's Island meeting. So I'm going to need some help with this. When I first read it, I got a little queasiness about regulations being out of sync with between state and federal agencies and so forth. So let Marin lead us through that and then see what the pleasure of the board is, where we go with it. Thank you.
And hopefully my presentation will clear some things up. So if you'll recall, back in October, at the annual meeting, the board directed the PDT to develop a white paper on season and possession limit options in response to repeated conversations that the board had on the opening for coastal shark species. So the PDT held a conference call and makes the following recommendations that are contained in this PowerPoint. And if you'll just recall, the board follows NOAA fisheries, but this is subject to change under adaptive management. So the issue is that the board has discussed and had issue with NOAA fisheries' proposed season opening dates at multiple board meetings. So the purpose of this is just to set a specific date that could help to streamline this process and eliminate these repeated conversations. So the PDT discussed this, and there are 3 different issues with choosing a set date that I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of. First, Florida fishermen have expressed concern with the January 1st opening date because at that time they're targeting other species and don't wish to switch to targeting shark species at that time. In addition, there is a time area closure for bottom longline fishermen in federal waters off of North Carolina, and that's from January 1st to July 31st. And finally, the waters off of Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey are closed from May 15th until July 15th. So as Mark pointed out, if state and federal waters had different seasons, it would be difficult to manage, monitor, and enforce. And in addition, some states allow federal permit holders to land sharks during a closed season, so it would be especially difficult to enforce. So what the PDT has come up with to solve this problem is simply writing a letter to NOAA Fisheries, either one letter every year or a letter to represent multiple years with a always start after date, indicating that the Spiny Dogfish and Coastal Sharks Management Board would not like the coastal sharks to open until after that date. So the PDT investigated which optimal date that might be, and so they used landings from 2008, and that was due to recent changes in management, and so they used those landings to determine what the most effective always open after date was. And as you can imagine, the large coastal shark species are the only species group that presented a problem. The other species groups, there's no problem with the January 1st opening date. So the average season length from 2008 to 2012 for large coastal sharks is 151 days, with 3 years, 2008, 2011, and 2012, reaching 80% of the quota. And if you recall, NOAA Fisheries closes the fishery when 80% of that quota is reached. So in order to prevent an early closure, this requires that an opening date be August 2nd at the latest. So the board investigated how much this would disadvantage states if the season was not opened until June 1st, July 1st, or August 1st, and that's what this table represents. So as you can see, Florida is pretty much the only state that is severely affected if there is not an opening date until August 1st. So what the PDT has come up with is an always open after date of March 1st, and I did have some discussions with TC representatives from Florida, and they didn't think that this would significantly affect the Florida fishery because the sharks are still in the waters in Florida after March 1st, so they're still available to those Florida fishermen. So the PDT recommends that the board send a letter to NOAA Fisheries each year or write one letter for multiple years requesting that March 1st is the always open after date. And in addition, the other thing that the PDT discussed were adjustable possession limits. If you'll recall, NOAA Fisheries has the option to adjust possession limits throughout the year, although the state waters do not, the FMP does not allow states to do that. This was discussed in 2011, and it was determined that most states have the flexibility to address this without an addendum, but we just wanted to kind of check back in and see if that was still the case and if this was something we needed to address. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and so just for my understanding, the matter of writing a letter on the start date, a letter suffices. It's not we don't need to initiate an action for that. Is that staff's and Bob's understanding? Okay.
If I can clarify, the NOAA Fisheries has a public comment period every year for the coastal shark specifications, so we thought that during that public comment period is when we would submit the letter.
Pat Augustine, then Rob.
Yeah, thank you. Good report, Marin. Have you talked to NOAA about this, or the HMS people, to find out how much of a problem this will create? Or if not, it will create or won't create? And then let's take the next step from there.
Yes, there are NOAA Fisheries representatives on the PDT, so they helped in developing
Can we ask them to respond, please?
Sorry?
NOAA Fisheries like to comment to Pat's question.
No, I mean, this would be one of the things that we consider. We have a series of season opening criteria. Having kind of equitable distribution of fishing opportunities across the range is one of the things we look at. So, no, it would not be a problem. It's not a guarantee, but it would not be a problem.
Thank you. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm a little surprised at the March 1 date, seeing the Mid-Atlantic states really under a closure until July 15th, and the resource is not available in March, and I also thought that NOAA was going forward with the June 1 date, which at the time, the June 1 date, although it's within the Mid-Atlantic closure, that at least gives better probabilities that there could be harvest in the Mid-Atlantic. So, the March 1 takes me by surprise.
Marin's going to respond.
Yeah, and I'd just like to clarify, the March 1 was just an arbitrary suggestion based on these preliminary, analysis by the PDT. If the board would like to discuss other always open after dates, then that's certainly okay.
Rob, a follow-up?
Follow-up for NOAA, I guess, would be, what did I see where June 1 was promoted as the start date? Was there something that NOAA put out about that?
Yeah, our final rule for this year. So this is, as Marin indicated, an annual process. We go through specifications with proposed and final rule. We get a lot of comment on start dates from a variety of sectors, and so it's something we look at and set every year. So you are correct, it is June 1st for this year.
Any other board discussion? The board in agreement that letter would be written during the comment period?
Can we see how the board feels about it June 1st?
What was the other issue?
That's the only issue. So, Rob, would you like to change the always open after date from March 1st to June 1st?
Virginia would. So, yes.
Dr. Daniel.
North Carolina would as well, for the same reasons. I mean, we don't have the Mid-Atlantic closure, but we have a closure off our coast until, I believe now it's August 1st. So we have no access to the fish until August 1st. So we've kind of felt like July the 15th was what kind of kept me from blowing my top. So June 1, I mean, there's going to be a lot of fish caught before we even have access to them. So I hope that we can, if we could get something in there, I'd like to see it later than June 1, personally. But, in fact, I'll make a motion.
Hang on until I want to hear from Jim. Do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. I thought the options were, excuse me, as I thought Marin talked about, was that we could write a letter that covered several years, or we could write a letter that covered on an annual basis, and I would be perfectly comfortable, at least on an annual basis, to look at that and see what happened.
Okay. Seems that we don't have agreement on the start date, so I think we probably need a motion to get somewhere on this. Louis?
Well, first, I guess a question for Florida, because they're the outlier for the Mid-Atlantic states, and I include myself in there. And I may be losing my mind, which is highly possible, but there was one issue where we were opening January 1 for half the quota and the middle part of the year for half the quota, and that seemed to have been agreed to by industry. Am I incorrect there, Margot?
So I think maybe you're talking about the discussions we had before we were putting in the adaptive management criteria, which is what we look at. When we were talking about a January 1 opening, we would monitor landings, and if we saw that the quota was going to go before all the areas had availability, we could drop the trip limits to slow it down and then open them back up when the fish were more readily available coastwide. And we did put those criteria in. As Marin indicated, we have not actually used them yet, but I think that's what you're remembering.
That may be, because I think industry supported that approach, which would have sort of split it 50-50. So, I mean, I'd prefer July 1, but I would like to know how Florida would respond to that before I make that in a form of a motion.
Jim, do you have a response for that?
July 1, a year at a time, as I suggested.
Then I'll make that as a motion that we request that the not open before July 1.
And could you maybe remind us of what the plan development team thoughts on a later opening and the consequences of that?
Yeah, the plan development team, I think the only state that we were concerned about is Florida, so if Florida feels okay with that.
Jim?
So I saw that you made some estimates of what it would be if it was August the 1st. What would it be, for my curiosity, and so I can get back home and maybe not have to leave again? What would it be for July 1st, the numbers?
Well, we're working on the motion. So Florida would lose 32% of their landings based on the landings from 2008 to 2012.
Do you have a motion yet? Did you get that answer?
Yes, sir, thank you.
In my discussions with representatives from Florida, I just asked about March 1st. I didn't ask about July 1st.
Motion by Dr. Daniel. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Rob O'Reilly. Okay, so we have a motion to modify the PDT recommendation to June 1st. Any discussion on that motion? Yeah, I thought it was July. Where did Lewis go? Is it July or June, the motion? July 1. Bob?
Just for clarification, this is just for 1 year, is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. Any other comments on the motion? This would be done via letter during the, as we discussed earlier. Okay. Any? 2000. This would be applicable for the 2015 fishing season. Move to not open the large coastal sharks fishery until July 1 for 1 year. Motion by Dr. Daniel, seconded by Mr. O'Reilly. Any comments on the motion? Seeing none, you need a few seconds to caucus. Is the board ready to vote? Russ, do you have a question?
This is to send a letter, correct?
To send a letter. It's about the date specified and requested in the letter.
It doesn't quite say that in the motion.
Yeah, I think to say to move to send a letter to NOAA Fisheries requesting that not open a large coastal shark fishery until July 1st for 1 year. I think Bryn said it was the fishing year 2015. All right, is the board ready to vote? Let me reread the motion, Joe. Move to send a letter to NOAA Fisheries requesting to not open the large coastal sharks fishery until July 1 for 1 year, parentheses, fishing year 2015. Motion by Dr. Daniel, seconded by Mr. O'Reilly. Send caucusing. We'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you for that. Any other issues?
Hey, excuse me, sorry. Can we do abstentions?
Oh, service extension. Okay, thank you. Any other business on that agenda item? That moves us on to Dogfish. Okay, Mr. Borden, Dogfish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. I'm simply requesting that at the May meeting, we have a discussion of the board of the possession limit on Dogfish. Schedule that on the agenda, and the whole basis, so everyone understands. Excuse me. Whole basis for the request is that the Mid-Atlantic Council and the New England Council have both recently taken positions on Dogfish, which are very different, and there was a lot of kind of passionate debate on all sides of the issue. I'm not going to repeat that at this point. But the essence of it was the Mid-Atlantic Council stayed at 4,000 pounds in terms of the possession limit. The New England Council staked out the position that they did not want to have a possession limit. Now, what happens from now on is that those recommendations will eventually go in a implementation package from each of the councils to the National Marine Fisheries Service, and it's my understanding that the National Marine Fisheries Service will have to pick one of those two options, or maybe something in between, but that's up to them. But I think we have a need to not only go back and review some of the arguments on both sides of the issue, but possibly be in a position to comment on a proposed rule if NIMS puts it out, and with sufficient time for us to comment on.
Thanks, Dave. Is there any objection from the board to including agenda item? Dave Fish, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I have no objection except to say that indeed it is more controversial than I thought it ever would be. No possession limit from New England, 4,000 for the Mid-Atlantic Council, which is consistent with the current ASMFC position. So I do agree with David, because there is so much disagreement on this at the council level. Why not schedule it for our next meeting and then afford an opportunity for fishermen and for dealers to know it's going to happen, so they can weigh in. There was no real input from fishermen or processors at either council meeting, I don't think, on this issue. It's a bit more complicated than most people appreciate, so it does deserve close attention, more discussion, and some announcement as to the fact that it is going to be on the agenda to be discussed. You've already mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that we have a letter from John Whiteside of the Sustainable Fisheries Association. He represents the only processors involved in Dogfish now. They're all in Massachusetts, just 3 of them. So this is not exactly a widespread fishery in terms of processing capacity. Limited markets. I won't go into the details except to say I have no objection to this suggestion by Mr. Borden.
Thanks, Rob. And then Dave.
Yeah, I won't go too far in this either, but it would be good to also, if there's any updates on any progress that's being made with Europe on the exports and the problems with the PCBs, that might have a little something to do with our discussion. So if there's some way to get information on that, I guess in that last Mid-Atlantic Council meeting, National Marine Fisheries Service indicated it was having dialogue, but I don't know to what extent or what has transpired.
Thanks, Rob. Dave, and then Bill Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally agree with David's point. Spiny Dogfish is not on the agenda, so it would be inappropriate for us to take any action, and that's the reason I suggested we defer it for the May meeting. I would make the one suggestion, and I would defer to the board chair and the leadership of the commission. Given the controversy that's involved here, we may want to invite some of the members of the New England Council Committee or the Mid-Atlantic Council Committee to at least join us in the dialogue. Thank you.
Thanks. I can work with Bob on that and see what would be appropriate. Yeah, I agree. I didn't want to go into too much discussion. The Commission has already set its specifications for Dogfish, so were we of a mind to try to change those? To just outline for us, Bob, how difficult that would be.
It would be a super majority vote, 2/3 majority vote to do that. I think the difficult part may be more on the state's end. If the states have implemented trip limits and they've got that process underway, it may be more difficult for them to reverse those processes.
Louis?
Yeah, I was confused for a minute, but I think I do want to make sure it's clear. And if you said this, David, I'm sorry, but this is just for the New England fishery. We don't have trip limits for our fisheries south of.
Talking about the northern region, aren't we?
Yeah, it's the northern region that has the 4,000-pound trip limit.
To answer Lewis's question, that is what my intent is, but I would point out that because of the way the rules are written, the Mid-Atlantic states have state quotas, but because the federal rule trumps anyone with a federal permit, you have a 4,000-pound trip limit in place.
Yes, I'm seeing that there's consensus to have this as an agenda item at the spring meeting. We can have a more thorough discussion and invite parties that have been identified, dealers, and Bill Adler.
This is on a different subject. Is it okay now?
Different than the dogfish matter?
It's a dogfish.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Once again, it does have to do with the marketing of it. And I know that there was a mention made at the last meeting by Mr. Petoni that the USDA was thinking of buying up dogfish for institutional foods, and because it is MSC certified, which is what the government has basically said, you can't buy any food, seafood that isn't MSC certified. Well, dogfish is, but there's no market for it. So the USDA was going to buy up the dogs for institutional food service. This was I think it was in the last minutes of the meeting we had, and I wanted to know if that has actually happened. And it was to basically establish a market right here.
We're kind of off base relative to the original dogfish item, but Mike, do you have a brief comment on that?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so my comments at the October meeting was that NIMS had received a request from industry to endorse their request to the USDA, and I forget the specific provision of law where the USDA can certify certain food products that are then put on a list, and then that list is essentially a source for large institutional buying of that product for prisons and school systems and things of that nature. We had received a request from industry to endorse their request. At the time, we were still deliberating on that request, and we remained to be deliberating on that request.
Thank you.
Section 32, I think they said, of whatever.
Anything else on the dogfish question? Any other business come before this board? Seeing there's a motion to adjourn. So move, seconded by everyone. Thank you very much. It's come to my attention that a long-standing member of this commission, this may be his last meeting, and of course that is Mr. Augustine, and just say from my perspective his ability to refocus boards when they get off track and drive a discussion to the end is legendary. His cookie-making ability is also legendary. Some other exploits I'm aware of that we'll have to talk about in a different session, but I certainly have very much appreciated his friendship and camaraderie and his efforts at the board, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim Gilmore to give some specifics, and this all caught me by surprise, as have some of the other early retirements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me preface this by, this is not, there still may be a reprieve, so we're keeping our fingers crossed, but we figured it would be remiss if we didn't at least say something today. Pat, and many of you know him even longer than I do, has been, with ASMFC for 15 years as the governor's appointee. He has, almost survived 4 governors. And actually, the first year he was he started with ASMFC was 1998, which was the start of the fluke. So, that was the. I think Pat has shattered every personal record in terms of resolutions, motions, second to motions, and on the fly on the fly motions and vote. Will you let me do this? He's like,
You're embarrassing me.
and voting against his own motions although I know Rhode Island tried to beat that a couple of days ago. He is the official baker, I think, of the commission, and I think that'll probably be one of the most important things we'll miss. But he's been an inspiration to a lot of us. There's never been a dull moment with Pat, and we could go on and on for hours, and hopefully we're going to be able to do that in future meetings. But just on behalf of all the commissioners, I'd like to, I think a round of applause would be in order to my colleague and friend, Pat Augustine.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Pat. Is there any other business that come before this board? So he made the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Thank you. We stand adjourned.
We get the horseshoe crab board going.